Welcome to Macroeconomics. We will be exploring economic growth, the secret to our modern economic prosperity. Why do we care about growth? Economic growth brings prosperity in real life. People can enjoy higher standards of living. There's less poverty, more security, more possibilities. We can see a very striking example of this by looking at the price for lighting in the UK going back 1,000 years. In the year 1300, it cost 35,000 modern pounds to produce 1 million lumen hours of light. That number gradually diminished through the 1400s, the price is bouncing between 15,000 to 20,000 pounds. But we're going to hover here for a few centuries. Still in the 1700s, we're bouncing between 10 and 15,000 pounds, depending on the scarcity of the year. But then we hit the Industrial Revolution in 1800 and the price plummets. And it keeps going down decade after decade. Finally, around the birth of electricity, we'll zoom in 1903, the price is now 220 pounds, a fraction of what it used to be centuries earlier. But we're not done. The cost of electricity continues to plummet, the quality of light bulbs continues to improve. And even by 1992, we're down to 5 pounds. Are we done yet? No, because we still have the invention of LED lighting in the past few decades. In 2006, the price for 1 million lumen hours is £2.89. Among other things, this has allowed us to create incredible spectacles of light. We can read and work at all hours of the day whenever we choose. We're no longer reliant on the sun for our lighting. We also have less indoor pollution because light bulbs don't create smoke like candles and kerosene lamps. It is so stunning we can see this from space. South Asia in 1994 versus 25 years later. India and Pakistan have seen significant growth over this period. Lighting is not the only place where we've seen growth. We see technological and economic progress across the board. This is one of the most dramatic and important graphs you will see ever in this entire class. We're looking at world GDP over the past 2 millennia. And what do we see for nearly 1,600, 1,700 years? It's mostly flat, or at least it might as well be compared to what we saw in the past 200. A global economy of over $100 trillion in new goods and services produced every year. And it's not just the wealthy experiencing this economic progress. We're seeing improvement across the globe. These graphs' horizontal axis are the daily income per capita. In international 2011 dollars, the extreme poverty line is considered $2 a day. In 1800, the majority of the planet's population was below this. By 1975, not only do we see most of Europe and America escape this poverty, but sections of Asia and Pacific are starting to do so as well. And then in the next 50 years, by 2015, the growth of China and India lifted hundreds of millions of people out of extreme poverty. And in the blue, we see half of Africa is escaping extreme poverty as well. Of course, there is still a lot of work to do. We aren't done yet. There is a tremendous amount of economic suffering that continues. However, we must acknowledge, celebrate, and learn from the amount of progress we've made. Since 1963, 50% of humans were living at less than $2.15 a day in 2017 dollars. Today, that figure is less than 10%. We can't overemphasize this progress enough. So, let's go to the beginning. Homo sapiens have lived for 300,000 years, largely living near subsistence level standards of living. Then around 12,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution kicked in, increasing our ability to feed ourselves, supporting a higher population. Fascinatingly, agriculture developed independently across the globe. Mesopotamia, one of the earliest ones, 9000 BC, wheat and goats. China independently domesticated rice, millet, and pigs. Papua New Guinea, sugarcane and bananas, 6000 BC. Those are tasty things to domesticate. Mesoamerica, maize and beans. Peru independently did it. East Africa independently did it. And Eastern America did it 4,000 years ago, domesticating pumpkins among others. Much more recently, the Industrial Revolution also featured a major agricultural revolution. Fertilizers became widespread. It allowed for feeding a previously unthinkable population growth. Textiles pioneered the use of machines. Railroads lowered transportation costs in connecting markets. And we're not done yet. The 20th century featured tremendous improvements in plastics and other synthetic materials that help us make Legos, among other things. The freedom to create with modern synthetic materials and chemistry cannot be underemphasized. Transportation breakthroughs such as standardized containerization and intercontinental flight created vast, cheap global markets. This was something humans have never seen before. Society transformed. We became more urban. There was an increased political engagement, and democracy was given to a higher share of the population. Extraordinary, miraculous technological growth, and a rise of a wealthy, prospering and powerful middle class. We saw basic education and literacy become near universal. During the course of the 20th century, public and private high school graduation rates went from less than 5% to well over 80%. Modern labor and drudgery-saving devices became ubiquitous. In 1930, less than 10% of households had a mechanical refrigerator. By 1970, everybody has one. The washing machine went from 10% of households in 1920 to 70% by 1960. Electricity as a primary source of lighting entered the majority of households by 1930. And while tremendous progress was made for a flushing indoor toilet for the first half of the century, it wasn't until 1960 or 1970 that they basically were in every house. Think about it, many of our grandparents, and certainly a large share of our great-grandparents, didn't have a flushing toilet in their house growing up. They used outhouses instead, and the world had plenty of winter back then too. So, what caused it? Where did this graph come from? What lessons, what policy choices, what institutional arrangements led to this reduction in material economic suffering and an explosion in freedom, possibility, and prosperity? Stick around to the next video.